Good morning. I don't know that I saw the classic breakdown. It's a DevOps event, so we have to do it. So I'm going to ask, by show of hands, who here would say that they are predominantly from a developer proclivity? Oh, a whole bunch. And how many from an operations proclivity? Cool. And of course, we all do both. Also, managers. Who are managers, leads, things of that sort? VPs, if you dare to raise your hand. Cool. Always good to know. Sort of before I get started, I want to thank Julie for putting together this event and really being the heart and soul of it. There are a lot of people involved, but I think Julie really is kind of the heart and soul of this event. So thank you very much. We love you a ton. So it's good to be here in Boise. Also, I heard there was a whole bunch of people from ServiceNow. Are there people from ServiceNow here? None? Oh. Okay. What I wanted to talk about was sort of bottoms up, right? All throughout the history of management, we see kind of two different types of movements. Those that start from sort of the executive branch down, and then those that actually start from sort of people actually doing the work up. And I was going to go over kind of 100 years of operations history, but in 30 minutes, it's a little aggressive. So I'm going to touch on it, but not go into as much depth as I intended to. You also notice my super hot wife, Tamara, is co-credited here because she gets to be drug along through all my various journeys. One thing that I think is really important in these types of events is to remember a kind of a great quote and great ideal from Richard Feynman, which is that he learned very early on the difference between knowing the name of a thing and knowing something about the thing. And at events like this, it's really easy to focus on a whole bunch of different things without necessarily digging deep on them. And so ask questions, be curious, dig into the heart of things and why things are. There's really nothing in this world that's good or bad. There are contexts in which it's good or bad. And so it's always good to be reminded at this point. I think it helps keep me very honest. Henry Ford was an amazing man, and one of the quotes of his that's just perfect for this sort of context was this quote, that coming together is a beginning. And DevOps was that beginning. Keeping together is progress. We're here, right? This started in 2009, it's 2016, you're here. So we're obviously doing that, but working together is success. I think that's where we all struggle. I think that's the thing that we're all working at. Has anyone actually fully realized the DevOps vision? No, I guarantee you, no one. It's a journey. It's something that we're working towards, and it's mostly about working together with a lot of different people. DevOps is about a relationship. It's all about love, man. You gotta love one another, right? Come to a chef event, we love to hug, we love just, we're just honest about it. We just love each other. It's all about love, dev and ops coming together. Because we're so much better together, right? Two peas in a pod. And while peanut butter is amazing and chocolate is fantastic, you put those two together and you've got a service management facility for joy, man, right? Better together. I mean, try peanut butter without that chocolate. It's a sticky mess. We can always come together, keep together, but it's all about working together, really making the two function together. We're better together. So, more walks on the beach, hand in hand, developers and sysadmins, loving it out. I mean, it's what it's all about, right? Just lovey, ooey, gooey joy, right? Kind of, sort of, but not really. There's actually a reason that we're here. And this is one of the things that started it. Does anybody recognize this page? A little bit of history. It's the first ever web page at CERN, introducing the World Wide Web, 1992. The web started to change things in a big way, not just in tech. First, the web happened, and then we started seeing this sort of thing happening. Computers connected to other computers, connected to other computers, connected to other computers. And all of a sudden, the world became more and more interconnected and interdependent. You guys remember this one? That's what Amazon looked like when it launched. Man, it brings back some memories, right? Like, I had completely forgotten about that shade of gray. Ugh. But right, it hurts. You're like, oh yeah, the entire web was that. And there was generally like flashing icons. Remember when we loved everything animated because it was cool? It's awful. That's what Amazon looked like then. That's what Amazon looks like now. A little bit of evolution. The world's come a very long way. Once upon a time, developers created software at things called software companies, and they would sell that software, frequently in a box, because that was fun. Businesses and customers would buy that software, administrators and users would install it and manage it, and then there would be a variety of different types of specialized admins that would oversee its function and make sure that it worked. And we had DBAs and all sorts of fun things, right? That was a reality. That's not the reality today. Companies deliver services. Those services are generally developed in-house. They're delivered to customers via the internet, and they are consumed as services. This makes that iteration cycle way faster. This is one of the reasons that DevOps can be a thing, right? We didn't need developers and operations people to work together. In fact, there was a time when we didn't actually call it operations. It was just system administrators, right? When did it become operations? When it became a service. You can iterate incredibly fast, but so can all of your competitors. We had the same sort of thing that actually happened about 100 years ago. At one point, the horseless carriage, today known as the car, was actually created by small universities. They were bespoke items. There were small private firms that would build these things, and each one was different, unique, and beautiful, much like our infrastructures. But then Henry Ford had an idea that everyone should have a car, that the car represented freedom, that the car represented a better life, and something that was in line with a sort of an American ideal, and he wanted to build one for everyone. And one of the things that people don't acknowledge about Henry Ford is that it wasn't actually his passion to build cars. He actually just thought of everything at scale. When he was a boy, his father was a watchmaker, and so he would repair watches. And what he was thinking about was not just how to repair a watch, but how to repair 1,000 watches. Anytime he looked or touched at anything, he thought about scale. How do I do a lot of it? So when he started getting interested in cars, he thought immediately about scale. An incredible number of innovations came out of it. The methods that he created became known as Fordism. When the Encyclopedia Britannica was going to add an entry to their encyclopedia about Fordism, he said, no, I don't like that term. Let's call it mass production. And it dominated the 20th century. Something that created to solve a problem became almost a universal way of life, right? Now the question that arises out of some of these things is when you look back at history, you have to wonder, did mass production come about because Henry Ford created it? Or was mass production an inevitability and Henry Ford happened to be the one who did it first? I think that's an important thing as you look across history. There are a lot of things where it's not necessarily clear that one person in fact created it. Rather, a bunch of people were thinking about it. Like if you look back at in history, you see around the time of Darwin, he was not the only person thinking about the ideas of evolution. There was a bunch of people who were thinking about it. He's the one who sort of made the biggest mark, right? In fact, some actually say most of those ideas in fact came from his father a generation before. But he wrote it down and he had the research behind it and we came to know of it. I think we've seen this transition over the last 20 years and it's pretty clear that it's not any one company that caused this thing to happen. It was an inevitability. It was going to happen. And there are some people who will be remembered as being more important to it than others, but we're here now, we can see it's all around us. It's an inevitability, and it's not just about tech, it's about everything, it's about the way we communicate. Scale changes everything. Our businesses have fundamentally had to change the way they function. We used to have the rule of 7, 17, and 70s. Anyone remember this? Any sysadmins remember this one? The general idea was if you had to do it 7 times, do it by hand. 7 times. Got to do it 17? Probably ought to make a script out of that thing. Got to do it 70 times? Probably got to build something fairly robust that can actually handle this. Today, we have the rule of N. Even if you're just deploying a small test application, who knows how wide you need to scale it? From day one, it needs to be able to scale. So the idea of handling a whole bunch of different scenarios differently based on what you're doing has actually become a bit of a misnomer. You need to think about N scale from the beginning, and if you don't, life is hard. Scale changes everything, and the ability to scale makes it move even faster. So we now have about 20 years of living in the future, from the time that first Amazon page showed up and the first internet e-commerce sites showed up to where we are today. And over this time, we've had to develop new ways of managing people. We've seen a whole bunch of new people come in. We have new tools, and we have new techniques, and it is not specific to technology. The branch of this movement in technology is known as DevOps, but it's not unique by any way, shape, or form to technology. So I want to be really clear. By the way, if you're playing the drinking game, remember, every time somebody says they're not doing DevOps, take a shot. Just saying. I think the reason that people struggle with DevOps, and almost everyone will universally say they're not doing DevOps, they're doing something else, is because DevOps is not actually just a cohesive set of practices. It is, in fact, a world view. It is a way of looking at the world, it's a way of thinking of the world, and that's why almost anything can be described as being DevOps. But then when you poke into it, it's kind of jelly-like, right? What does that really mean? It's a worldview. This worldview developed out of a bunch of other ones previously. Agile, right? Back in the day when Patrick Dubois, myself, and a whole bunch of other people started talking about these things, it wasn't actually DevOps yet, it was Agile operations. Before that, we saw in other parts of business as lean. Before that, it was scientific management and operations management, operations research, all the way back to Taylor around the turn of the last century in management science. But I like to break this worldview down into 3 large components, fairly classic ones that apply here. And that is the collaboration of people, the convergence of process, and the creation and exploitation of tools. So I want to go through these different areas, and I'm going to tease out a couple things. Now, I could talk on any of these at considerable length, but I'm just going to pick out a couple of things that I want to sort of leave as impressions for you to dig in and to think about. Try and be a little bit controversial just for fun. So we'll start with the collaboration of people. Talked about how it was a relationship. And that relationship is across organization and within organization. So when we're developing people, we need to think about the individual and who they are and where they're going. One of the things that's classic in this current environment is very few people have anyone looking out for them. There's no set career paths these days. People change companies frequently, and so people really need to be sort of developed. Teaching, mentoring, and coaching people is incredibly important and something that all of us need to be thinking about for people within our organizations and for ourselves. A big thing today is that we have to allow people to be successful and to have an impact, particularly when you hear folks talking about the millennials. One of the key things that we see around millennials is that they want to have an impact. They want to come to a company and make a difference. And if they don't feel like they're making a difference, they just move on. Unlike some of those in my generation and generations prior, they're not content to sit in a seat and do a job for 10 or 15 years before they start making a difference. They want to do it from day one. And they have the tools, technology, and capabilities in order to actually do that. So they're frustrated when they can't. We have to allow people to feel successful, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with having a pride of workmanship, and it's something that people deserve and should be able to cultivate. People have to be given freedom to innovate and experiment and find a new way. We'll talk more about this with tools in a minute. And we need to align individuals' purpose with the organization's purpose to form a virtuous loop. The way to get the most out of your people is to ensure that the thing that they want to do with their life aligns with the thing that your organization wants to do with its business. And that way, each individual is contributing in a way that's based on their own passions and their own desires and aligns with the organization. When you have people who are working out of their own passions, you don't tend to have a lot of problems that we'll hear about, things like burnout and whatnot, that people just burn themselves out. They're doing it because it's what they want to do with their life. It's a much more virtuous loop. One thing about rewarding people, the DevOps movement has caused a lot of people to increase their salaries quite a bit. We have these rare birds who know these amazing skills, and so they go around and they start asking for salaries. Netflix kind of screwed all of us by making astronomical salaries, not unheard of. One thing I do think is funny is you can tell anyone who's making over $300,000 because when you ask what they make, they'll totally tell you. They'll just be like, it's like you went to Netflix, what are they paying you? Like $350, it's totally stupid. I don't know why. Over that amount, like, you just have no shame. One thing for companies to think about, because this does become an issue when people start wanting more, they come to events like this and then they go back and they go, dude, this company's hiring for people for $200,000, why can't I make that? Money doesn't matter. A lot of times we like to say it, money doesn't matter, until it does. And whether we like it or not, it is in fact a score. Like, let's just be honest. Like, it kind of is. And if it's not to you, it totally is to your wife. Opportunity is key. When it comes to earning potential and what people are doing with their lives, people will sacrifice earnings today for an increased earning in the future, right? We'll take less in order to learn more so that we can do better in the future. Provide people with opportunity, particularly in the DevOps movement. We're talking about all these cool things. Let them do it. Let them do it. Or they will go somewhere else. And think creatively and find new ways to keep people moving. There's a lot of organizations that, we've got to find ways to get people more and more engaged. For cool companies like Netflix and Facebook, not so hard. For traditional brick and mortar businesses, this can be really hard when people are in low-level junior positions or we're not doing amazing things with Kubernetes, because it's Kubernetes. 1.3 is amazing. You should totally use it. But find ways to give them the opportunities in their organizations as they grow. And one thing to think about with people is kind of Maslow, right? A lot of what we're talking about in the DevOps sort of world is people who are focused on that top tier of self-actualization, right? We need to think about whole individuals and what our people need in a holistic sort of sense so that we can allow them to not focus on their position in the org, their safety, their security. We can take all those things away, satisfy those needs, and as employers, we are responsible for doing that. A lot of our self-esteem, our safety, and our physiological needs are actually supplied by our employers. That's something to take seriously. Because once we've taken care of those and taken care of those adequately, we can focus on living up to your highest potential. And that's where the really exciting breakthroughs happen. It's not a sexy thing to talk about, but it is reality. Enable greatness in your people. Provide them safety. If they don't feel safe, you'll get strange, irrational behavior. Make it safe for people to succeed, to fail, and to grow. Encouraging curiosity and learning. Encourage creativity and innovation everywhere you go. And remember, innovation is nothing more than something new, a new way of going about doing things, and hopefully a better way. And so encourage innovation by allowing people to branch out. If you try and stick people into a common mold to follow the old patterns of doing things, you won't get innovation. Duh. Allow people to do stupid and crazy things and let it fail and learn from the experience to do something new. And always avoid slowing people down. When we work together, we win together. So keep the egos out. It's hard, but we need to do it. And always look for win-win situations. I had a hard time always grokking this idea, everything needs to be a win-win situation. Like, that's easy to say. And then I learned an interesting axiom around sort of marriage and relationships. And somebody said, if you're fighting with your spouse and you win, your reward is that you're now married to a loser. Think about it. I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. Okay, I think I just figured something out. Something clicked in a really interesting way. And I find the same thing applies in the workplace. If I'm the one who's right and everyone else is wrong and I'm winning all the arguments, I'm surrounded by losers, which is not what I want to do. Always fight for the win-win situation. When it comes to the creation and exploitation of tools, now I say exploitation and creation of tools because there are a lot of great open source tools out there to utilize, and we should absolutely take advantage of them. Why reinvent the wheel if somebody's already done it and done it really well? But it's also the creation of tools. And moreover, seeing things like what Kelsey showed earlier, which is fantastic, which is take the tools that you have, that you've purchased, take the tools that you've acquired from the open source, and then build that glue to put these things together and do some interesting and amazing sorts of things. It's both using what's available and building your own to come up with the best solution. Now, one of the things that's interesting right now is there's a lot of different technologies to know. If there's any one thing about this industry right now, it's very exciting because there's so many interesting things to know, but holy crap, it's exasperating, right? Does anyone ever feel like, I gotta know everything about everything? It's tiring. It's exciting, but it's really tiring. But when I look back over the last, 20 years or whatnot, there's a couple of technologies that we see have really evolved as like the primary pillars. Things that if you have to have an answer to these things. There are a lot of other technologies that are interesting, but these are the big ones that you have to embrace, or at least know why you are or not embracing them. And that would be the web itself, open source, cloud, fairly recently evolved. Configuration management became an issue as the scale increased thanks to cloud. Continuous delivery is now clearly the right way to go. And then containers, most recently. You may debate the ways in which these things are used or the individual technologies that are used. But every single one of us has to have an answer for these things, and most of them we actually actively depend on. The web at one point was a choice. In fact, I actually got in trouble in 1996 when I was fighting that Gopher was going to continue to be the way of the world and this web thing didn't really have legs. I was wrong. Apparently images are nice, which there weren't many of in the beginning. Open source used to be a debate. Now it's not. Cloud used to be a thing. I was one of the original people in the team at Joint in 2006 when we started what would eventually become a cloud. At the time, it was called Grid. I spent a number of years going around giving talks on what is cloud. Now you're using the cloud. Configuration management has been a requirement of being able to get to the scale that we wanted to get, and continuous delivery is just right. The idea of sending things into a pipeline, having out your automated tests so that it comes out the other end is absolutely important. It's also not remotely a new concept. It is, in fact, the assembly line applied to technology. That's all it is. Containers are here, and I imagine all of you have been thinking about containers in one way or another and how you're going to do it. There's still a lot of things to be figured out, but it's here to stay. And some would say, namely Adrian Cockcroft and the Netflix crowd, that next onto this list is going to be serverless. I don't know about that. There are a lot of great languages, though, and so there are a lot of great ways to build some of the technology that we want to. Rust is amazing. Go is, by the way, the best. So if you're not using Go, just use Go. Node.js, Erlang, Swift. Java's gotten better. Holy crap. It's not that bad. But Python is shit, and white space is really not a syntax error, so cut it out. Here's an important thing, though. With all these things, do please take the time to play with these things, explore. It's the fun part of our jobs anyway. So do take the time, and definitely run Kubernetes 1.3 because it's amazing. It's way easier than you think. If you played with Kubernetes like a year ago, you're like, this is hard. And now it's amazingly easy. Okay, convergence of process. We've heard, a lot of people will say we don't have process. We don't believe in process. We don't have a lot of process. We don't have formal process. Generally what they mean is we don't have formal process. Here's the thing is, just like ITIL, a lot of people say we don't do ITIL. Like, I guarantee you every one of you in this room is doing ITIL. You don't know it. Some of you probably don't know it. Some of you probably totally reject it. I guarantee you're using ITIL. All of us have process. You may not have written that process down, but you have a process. It may be a really crappy process, but you have a process. DevOps, in its most basic form, is about process. It's about gluing together codependent parts of the business. This is one of the things where when it becomes a culture thing, DevOps starts out as being developers and operations, like it's in the name, duh, right? And then all of a sudden it explodes out of control. And all of a sudden we're talking about our culture and how the entire business runs. How did that happen? It's because of the fact that DevOps is a worldview, and a worldview that aligns with a broader business trend. Businesses are moving faster, and every single part of our business is conjoined. When you're delivering a service, there's no difference between Team A and Team B. All there is a company has people, those people produce things, and then deliver it as a service. As far as the customer is concerned, there's no division in between, right? That's happening across our entire businesses as they speed up. We have to break down the walls and replace interfaces, replace them with interfaces. Think about microservices. Like, that's a lot of silos, right? I thought we were breaking down silos. There are a lot of silos. And the thing about silos is that companies have culture. The thing to understand about culture is that culture is an emergent behavior between individuals within an organization. You can say your culture is whatever you want to say it is, but at the end of the day, it's defined by actions. And this is why a lot of us have existential crises inside of companies, because we say one thing and we do quite another, and all of us don't know how to do anything about it. We're afraid to say anything. We just kind of have beer and complain. But there are within organizations a lot of different teams. There are a lot of different subcultures. Those subcultures have their own tribes, their own ways of doing things, and so harmonizing them is a challenge. And we have to respect the differences of all the different people within our organizations and find a way for their interactions to behave in a sane sort of way, or we will definitely pay the price. An important idea is that a startup, for those of you in smaller companies, is not a small version of a big company. Different types of businesses are very different in the way that they operate. There are a lot of rules. For those of you who are interested in understanding a variety of different types of companies, particularly those of you who call yourself startups, most of which are not in fact startups, they're small businesses, Steve Blank is where you want to go. Screw lean startup. Just go to the source and read Blank. There are a couple of universals, though, that we talk about in DevOps, but really apply universally. Continuous improvement. Who's going to complain with that? Organizational learning. Everyone should be doing it. Cross-organizational collaboration. Not a new concept. And replacing a cost mindset with a value mindset. This is an important one that we're trying to do, but a lot of people don't articulate it this way. Don't think about costs. Think about value. What do you do inside, and what does that contribute to the business? And pride of workmanship is something that everyone in every department deserves. Not just dev, not just ops. Think about your finance people, think about your marketing people, bringing technology together to solve their sorts of problems across the business. One idea that I won't get into here is diversity of thought. A lot of organizations talk about diversity, but one thing we need to really take into account is if you really want diversity, you want diversity of thought. That diversity of thought comes from a lot of people, from a lot of backgrounds. And the way that we need to optimize organizations is for actually healthy conflict, not similarity. If you've got a whole bunch of people who think the same way, you're going to get old, boring results. You're going to get uniformity and conformity, which produces security, but it doesn't provide innovation. It doesn't lead you to a new way of doing things, which is what a lot of us really want. So I'd encourage everyone to embrace a designed systems approach. Everything is connected to everything else. It is. It may not seem like it, but I guarantee you, it is. And the design aspect of this is realization that you can change it. It was made. It might not have been made by you, but it was made. and you can change it. You have the ability to change it through design. Lastly, I would encourage everyone to be a leader in your organizations. Whether you're a manager or you're an authority or you're not, lead your organizations. You're here. And that says something about who you are and what you want to do. Lead. There's only one qualification for a leader. Does anyone know what it is? Followers. That's it. So how do you get followers? Go first. Start walking. Others will follow behind. And you will be the leader the organization needs. Maybe not for the whole organization, but at least for a couple. And for those, it will make all the difference. Leadership is important. We have far too few. You're more empowered than you think. So please, for your sake and for those around you, lead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. So we're running kind of close to lunch here. We definitely want to make sure we get Gene in. So if you have any questions, please find Ben. He'll be hanging around, and definitely ask him questions. With that, we will turn it over to Gene.